The chandelier lights inside the Ritz-Carlton Manhattan glittered like frozen rain, casting sharp reflections across the marble floors. It was supposed to be a night of celebration, a charity gala filled with New York's wealthiest names, a place where power walked in, tailored suits and diamonds whispered from every neckline. And yet, in the center of all that glamour, a single moment sliced through the music and laughter like shattered glass. Christopher Vail, the CEO who loved the sound of his own applause, tightened his jaw as he stared at his wife, Lily Hartman. She stood beside him in a modest navy gown, too simple, too quiet, too not enough for a man intoxicated with status. One wrong answer to a donor's question, one tiny social misstep, and Christopher's face twisted with embarrassment. "You're humiliating me," he hissed, gripping her arm until her fingers trembled. "You don't belong here. Thanks for watching." Into Six Forum. Before she could respond, he shoved her. Not hard enough to injure her, but hard enough to make her stumble backward in front of 200 guests. A gasp rippled across the ballroom. A camera flashed. Someone whispered her name, confused, horrified. Lily steadied herself, heat rising behind her eyes, humiliation burning deeper than any bruise. Christopher raised his voice, loud enough for everyone, including the investors at his table, to hear. "Get out, right now. You're worthless in a room like this. Worthless." The word echoed off the golden walls, echoing through Lily's chest like a strike of thunder. She turned, chest tight, vision blurring as she stepped into the long hallway outside. The music behind her resumed in hesitant waves, but the humiliation clung to her like cold rain. Her heartbeat thudded in her ears as she reached for the wall, fighting to breathe. Then footsteps. Not Christopher's. A deeper voice followed, calm but resonant, carrying through the corridor with the weight of someone who wasn't afraid of a spotlight. "Mrs. Vail? Are you all right?" She froze, because the man walking toward her was the last person anyone expected to intervene, Christopher's most dangerous rival. And what he said next would change the course of her life forever. "She's priceless to me." And Lily Hartman had never belonged to the kind of world where chandeliers dripped like constellations and conversations floated on tides of wealth. She grew up in a quiet Minnesota town, in a house that smelled of pine floors and warm cinnamon bread, far from the noise and glitter of Manhattan. Her mother taught at the local elementary school. Her father repaired broken tractors for neighbors who paid late more often than they paid at all. Life wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. It was steady. It was real. She learned early how to work hard, how to keep going, even when the world felt too heavy. She was the kind of girl who stayed after class to clean paintbrushes for her art teacher, the kind who volunteered at the library on weekends, the kind who always made sure others were okay, even when her own hands trembled. That softness, that gentleness, was both her greatest strength and the thing that made her easy to underestimate. After her parents passed only 6 months apart, her mother from illness, her father from heartbreak, Lily moved to New York, determined to restart her life. She didn't arrive with money or connections. She arrived with a single suitcase, a community college transcript, and a heart still raw with grief. But she found a small job as a project assistant at Vail Corp, and for the first time since losing everything, she felt the distant flicker of hope. That was where she met Christopher Vail. He wasn't the polished CEO then, at least not yet. He was an ambitious director with a sharp mind and a sharper smile. When he noticed Lily taking late buses home and eating lunch alone at her desk, he approached her gently, almost kindly. He asked about her day, complimented her work, offered to walk her to the subway. For a girl who hadn't been looked at with real tenderness in so long, his attention felt like sunlight. And when he fell in love with her publicly, proudly, Lily believed she had somehow won the impossible lottery. He told her she grounded him, balanced him, softened him. She told herself he saw the things no one else cared to see. But love has a way of blinding even the brightest eyes. As his title rose, as boardrooms bowed to him, as he stepped into Manhattan's elite, something inside him hardened. The man who once brought her flowers from the corner stand began coming home, irritated, dismissive, impatient. Lily tried to excuse it as stress, pressure, exhaustion. She began apologizing for things she never did. She began shrinking to fit the edges of a life that no longer had space for her softness. Yet she stayed, because she remembered the version of him who held her during thunderstorms. Because she believed in the vows she made. Because she believed that love wasn't something you abandoned when it became inconvenient. But her devotion came with a cost. At Veilcorp, her quiet competence made her the perfect target. Tasks no one wanted were thrown her way. Credit for her work disappeared under Christopher's name. She was summoned only when the company needed a clean face, a polite smile, or someone to deflect questions. She didn't fight back. Not then, not yet. And the deeper she sank into that world, glittering but hollow, the more she felt the edges of herself wear thin. Lily didn't know it, but the night of the gala would be the moment everything she had endured would come crashing to the surface. The night she would finally see what her marriage truly was. The night she would learn just how merciless Christopher could be. And the night someone else, someone she least expected, would change the trajectory of her life with a single sentence spoken in her defense. "She's priceless to me." New York had a way of swallowing people whole, especially those who didn't come armored in wealth, reputation, and the confidence of someone who'd never known hunger or fear. For Lily, the city was breathtaking and brutal, all at once. Its skyline, the glittering towers of Manhattan, always seemed to glow with a promise she couldn't quite reach. She walked its streets as an outsider, moving between worlds she was expected to fit into but never fully belonged to. The Ritz-Carlton Manhattan, the setting of the gala, was the kind of place designed to impress even the most jaded billionaire. The lobby alone felt like a palace, polished marble floors, reflecting the golden lights from chandeliers that dripped like molten stars. Guests arrived in a procession of black Mercedes S-Class sedans and glossy town cars. The air shimmered with expensive perfume, tailored fabrics, and quiet conversations about mergers, stocks, and power. Lily often felt invisible in rooms like this. While the women floated in gowns shipped from Paris and diamonds that could anchor a small boat, her modest dress, carefully steamed, lovingly chosen, looked simple, almost fragile against the backdrop of opulence. She clung to her small clutch, a gift from her mother years ago, one of the few mementos she still carried from her old life. Inside the ballroom, everything sparkled. The ceiling soared high above, lined with gold leaf and fresco designs meant to mimic European cathedrals. Round tables were dressed in ivory linens, folded napkins shaped like lilies, and centerpieces that glowed with soft candlelight. Live violins played from the corner, weaving through the soft hum of elite conversations. At the front stood a stage where CEOs gave speeches rehearsed by marketing teams, voices practiced to mask vulnerabilities. Christopher belonged here. His polished shoes clicked confidently across the marble, his tuxedo tailored so sharply it seemed to sculpt his posture. He mingled with senators, philanthropists, tech giants, and hedge fund founders as if born into this world of wealth. Lily stood beside him, like a shadow. Every corner of the ballroom held symbols of status. Crystal flutes filled with champagne that cost more than her rent. Gleaming Mont Blanc pens clipped to suit pockets. Rolex watches catching every glint of light. Even the conversations seemed coated in gold, layered with subtle competition, who donated more, who closed the bigger deal, whose empire expanded the fastest. To Christopher, the gala was not just a charity event. It was a battlefield of reputation, a stage where every gesture, every smile, every word shaped how the room perceived him. He needed perfection, he needed admiration, and he needed a wife who enhanced his image, not one who stumbled under pressure. Lily sensed that tension the moment they arrived. His hand on her lower back felt more like a warning than a gesture of affection. "Smile, stand straight, don't embarrass me." Her stomach tightened with each expectation unspoken, yet loudly demanded. But the most important part of the evening was the presence of Veilcorp's most intimidating rival, Marshall Dynamics. Their CEO, Evan Marshall, had a reputation crafted from steel and silence. He rarely attended social events. Yet tonight, he stood across the ballroom, quietly observing the crowd from behind a glass of sparkling water, his expression unreadable. Christopher noticed. He always noticed Evan, and that awareness only made him more volatile, more desperate to appear flawless. Lily didn't know it yet, but the atmosphere inside the Ritz-Carlton wasn't just glamorous, it was charged. A storm waiting. A storm that would break the moment she made a simple mistake, one that Christopher would punish publicly, viciously, and without mercy. And from across the room, a pair of eyes watched everything far more closely than she realized. Eyes that were about to step into her ruined world. Christopher Vail had been called many things by the New York business circles: brilliant, relentless, visionary, but none of those words captured what he truly was beneath the polished exterior. Christopher was a man consumed by image, a man whose reflection mattered more than truth, a man who rose through the industry not simply through talent, but through strategy, manipulation, and an instinct for knowing exactly who to charm and who to crush. He grew up far from privilege, the son of a repairman and a mother who worked double shifts at a discount store. He learned early that respect wasn't given, it was taken, and he promised himself that one day he would take enough to never be looked down on again. That hunger, that fierce insistence on appearing untouchable, shaped every corner of his adulthood. By 35, he had already built Vail Corp into one of Manhattan's fastest-growing tech development firms. He bought the tailored suits, the penthouse, the Mercedes S-Class, the table at every gala, the friendships with power brokers who wouldn't have given him a second glance 10 years before. But beneath all the glimmering success was a man terrified of being seen as small again. When he married Lily, he believed he was choosing someone safe, someone humble, someone whose presence softened his rough edges and made him appear more human to investors who complained he felt too sharp. Her simplicity made him seem grounded. Her kindness made him look generous. She was, in his mind, an accessory to his story, an asset, not an equal. But what began as strategic convenience morphed into something more toxic. As he rose higher, his fear grew with him. Every social slip Lily made felt like a threat to his carefully crafted image. Every quiet moment she hesitated felt like she was pulling him downward. Instead of loving her through her insecurities, he weaponized them. Instead of lifting her up, he pushed harder. He criticized her clothes, her speech, the way she carried herself at company functions. He told her she should be grateful he chose her, as if her worth depended entirely on his validation. And when board members began whispering that she seemed nervous or unsure, his resentment only sharpened. Tonight's gala was the culmination of months of pressure. Vail Corp was under scrutiny for accounting inconsistencies he'd been hiding. Investors were restless, his rivalry with Marshall Dynamics was boiling again, and Evan Marshall, the one man he hated being compared to, was standing across the ballroom, perfectly calm, perfectly composed, drawing effortless respect. Christopher felt cornered. Any flaw, any misstep, any sign of weakness could shatter everything he had built. And in his mind, Lily was the weakest link. He'd warned her in the car, "Don't make this night harder for me." It wasn't a request. It was a command laced with frustration and fear. So when she hesitated while answering a donor's question, when he saw two investors exchange glances he interpreted as judgment, something inside him snapped. He saw not a wife who tried her best, but an anchor pulling him down. A crack forming in the image he fought so hard to protect. Humiliation surged through him like heat. He acted on instinct, the same instinct that had helped him claw his way out of nothing. Strike first, strike hard, don't let anyone see your weakness. He shoved her, publicly, brutally. The room gasped, but what Christopher did not anticipate was the one thing he feared most: someone more powerful, stepping between him and his target. Someone who saw value where he saw inconvenience. And that someone was already walking toward Lily, with eyes fixed directly on him. For a moment, the ballroom seemed suspended in a breathless silence, as though the crystal chandeliers themselves were holding their light still. Lily felt her pulse thrumming in her ears, louder than the violins, louder than the 100 conversations that had abruptly fallen quiet. She could feel every pair of eyes burning into her, curious, judgmental, entertained. She wished she could disappear into the polished marble floor beneath her feet. Christopher's hand tightened around her wrist. His smile, the one he reserved for investors and photographers, stayed frozen on his face, but his voice slithered beneath it, low and furious. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" he hissed. "You made me look incompetent." It had started with something so small. A donor had asked Lily a simple question about a new community initiative Vail Corp had promoted. She had attended every briefing, read every report, memorized every talking point she wanted to help Christopher shine. But the donor mentioned a budget Lily had never been told about, a detail Christopher had intentionally kept hidden. Her hesitation lasted only a second, but that second was enough to light the fuse. She tried to answer honestly. She tried to smile. She tried to recover. But Christopher saw only failure. His fingers dug into her skin as he leaned in. "Smile," he ordered through clenched teeth. "Pretend you aren't useless." Before she could react, he yanked her toward him, hard enough that her clutch slipped from her hand and clattered against the floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Guests turned. Whispers rose. Cameras lifted. "Christopher," she whispered, her voice small, humiliated, trembling. "Please, not here." But the plea only ignited him further. He stepped back and raised his voice loud enough for tables across the ballroom to hear. "She ruins every event," he barked, gesturing at her as though she were a mistake left on the floor. "I should have known better than to bring someone who has no idea how this world works." A woman gasped. A senator exchanged looks with his wife. Even the violinist faltered on a note. Lily froze. Her throat tightened, her breath snagged. She felt the heat of embarrassment rise up her neck like flames. Then it happened, the shove. It wasn't a push hard enough to injure, but it was deliberate, sharp, calculated for maximum humiliation. Her heels scraped against the floor as she stumbled backward, catching herself only because her hands struck the edge of a banquet table. A few champagne flutes toppled. A waiter rushed to steady the glassware, trying to hide his shock. Christopher didn't reach for her, didn't apologize, didn't even flinch. Instead, he lifted his chin, sweeping his gaze across the room as if daring anyone to challenge him. "Out," he snapped. "You're embarrassing me. Just leave." The ballroom buzzed with a collective inhale. One investor muttered, "Good God." Another whispered to his date, "Is he insane? Cameras are everywhere." Lily couldn't speak. Her throat felt strangled by humiliation. She forced her legs to move, turning away before Christopher or the crowd could see her tears forming. She clutched her arm as she hurried toward the hallway, her heart pounding so violently she thought she might collapse. Behind her, the murmurs swelled like a rising tide. "She looks terrified. She didn't deserve that. Thanks for watching." What a temper. But beneath the sea of voices, one pair of footsteps broke away from the rest, steady, purposeful, cutting through the noise like a blade. They were not Christopher's. They belonged to someone walking with intention. Someone who had seen enough. Someone who was about to change everything. And when Lily turned, breath shaking, she saw him, Evan Marshall, moving toward her with a look that made the entire ballroom shift. And his first words would ignite a war no one expected. "That's enough. She's not yours to break." The hallway outside the ballroom felt colder than the December air waiting beyond the hotel doors. Lily pressed her back against the wall, her breath trembling, her fingers digging into the fabric of her gown as though she needed something, anything, to keep herself from collapsing. The lights were softer here, diffused by frosted sconces, but they felt harsh on her tear-streaked cheeks. Her body shook uncontrollably, not from the winter chill, but from humiliation so sharp it felt like glass lodged beneath her ribs. "He shoved me. He really shoved me." In front of everyone. Her chest tightened, the memory looping over and over like a cruel film she couldn't escape. She cupped her hand over her mouth, muffling a broken sound that clawed its way up her throat. She had endured Christopher's sharp words before, his criticism, his coldness, but never this. Never something so public, so final, so deliberately meant to shatter her. She had tried so hard tonight. She had rehearsed answers, studied reports, memorized every detail she thought might matter. She wanted to make him proud. She wanted to belong. She wanted the city, the company, the billionaire world he lived in to stop looking at her as though she were a charity project wearing borrowed shoes. Instead, she became the evening's spectacle. Her vision blurred as tears welled again. She sank to a bench along the wall, the satin of her dress pooling around her like wilted petals. Her clutch retrieved by a kind waiter sat beside her, unopened, the clasp still bearing the faint scratch from when it hit the ballroom floor. She rested her trembling hands on it, remembering the night her mother had given it to her. "A woman's worth," her mother once said, "isn't determined by who holds her hand, but by what she holds in her heart." Lily had believed that. Once. But now she wondered if she had been foolish. If loving Christopher had been a slow unraveling she never noticed until the threads fell at her feet. Her breathing grew ragged, shallow. The edges of her vision darkened as panic clawed up her throat. She anchored herself by gripping the bench, trying desperately to keep the world from spinning. What am I going to do? Where do I go? How do I face them, all of them. A soft pair of footsteps approached, measured and steady. She flinched, assuming it was Christopher coming to drag her back inside for another reprimand. She straightened, wiped her face, tried to swallow her pain. But when she looked up, it wasn't him. It was Evan Marshall. For a moment, she was too stunned to speak. The CEO of Marshall Dynamics, one of the most powerful men in the city, was standing in front of her, his expression unreadably calm. He wasn't looking at her with pity. He wasn't looking at her with judgment. He was looking at her as though she were a person whose pain mattered. "Take a breath," he said gently, lowering his voice. "You're safe out here." She blinked, unable to form words. Evan's presence felt oddly grounding, like a single steady note cutting through the chaos. He reached into his tuxedo jacket and offered a folded handkerchief, white linen, embroidered initials. She hesitated before taking it, brushing her fingertips against his. A warmth spread through her chest, unexpected, undesired, but impossible to ignore. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. Evan's gaze hardened, not at her, but at the ballroom behind her. He crossed a line. Lily looked away, shame burning her skin. "Please, don't get involved." Evan's jaw tightened. "I already am." His voice carried a weight that made her breath catch. Because something in his tone told her this wasn't a simple act of kindness. It was the beginning of a storm Christopher Vale would never see coming, and Lily was standing at the center of it. And Evan's next move would change everything. Lily stared at Evan, her breath unsteady, unsure why a man as powerful and reserved as him would involve himself in something so messy, so intimate. Evan Marshall wasn't known for compassion. He was known for strategy. Every move he made was calculated, deliberate, sharpened by years of corporate warfare. So why stand here, steadying a woman who had just been publicly humiliated by her own husband? "Why are you doing this?" Lily whispered, clutching his handkerchief as though it were a lifeline. Evan didn't answer right away. Instead, he glanced down the hallway toward the ballroom doors, where murmurs and camera flashes still flickered. His jaw tightened, the faintest crack in his usually controlled expression. "Because Christopher crossed a boundary he had no right to cross," he replied. "And because pretending I didn't see it would make me no better than him." Lily shook her head. "But you don't even know me." At that, something flickered in his eyes, something that told her the truth was far more complicated than she realized. He took a slow breath. "Lily, this may not be the moment you want to hear any of this, but you should know the truth." He paused, watching her carefully, as if gauging how much she could withstand. "I've known about you for longer than you think." Infreshed. Confusion washed over her. "Known about me? What do you? You were the lead analyst behind Vale Corp's restructuring plan last year." His voice remained soft, but the words hit her like a shock. "The plan that saved Christopher's company. The plan he claimed credit for." Lily blinked, disbelief swirling. "How? How do you know that?" "Because my team reviewed the documents when we were considering a hostile acquisition." Evan's gaze deepened. "And your name was on the original drafts." Christopher removed it. Her breath caught. A memory flashed, late nights at the kitchen table, charts and spreadsheets illuminated by a dim lamp, her coffee going cold as she reworked projections line by line. Christopher had kissed her forehead, told her she was helping him understand the numbers, made her feel useful, valued. He lied. He always lied. Evan continued, "You're talented, sharp, you see patterns most analysts miss. I've been waiting for the right moment to confirm what I suspected. Your work kept Vale Corp afloat." Lily pressed a shaking hand to her chest. "Why didn't you say anything? Why wait until now?" "Because I needed proof," Evan said. "And tonight, Christopher gave it to me." His reaction in there wasn't about embarrassment, it was fear. Fear that someone would eventually notice how much of his empire was built on your back. The words trembled through her. He said, "I was worthless." Brascom. Evan stepped closer, still at a respectful distance, but close enough that she felt the steadiness radiating from him. He said that because losing control terrifies him. Men like Christopher depend on people like you staying small. Her throat tightened. "And you? What do men like you depend on?" Evan's expression softened in a way she had never seen from him. "On truth," he said. "On integrity. On people who know their worth, even when the world tries to erase it. If you specially can't it, it's a very for us." Lily felt something shift inside her, something painful but empowering, like a bone finally setting after years of being misaligned. She looked down at the handkerchief, traced the stitched initials E.M., and felt tears rise again. But this time they weren't only from shame, they were from clarity. "You deserve better tonight," Evan said quietly. "And you're going to get better, much better." "Why do you sound so certain?" Lily whispered. His eyes locked onto hers. "Because Christopher hasn't realized yet that he's just ignited the one war he can't win." Lily swallowed. "What war?" "The war," Evan said, "where you stop standing behind him and start standing against him." And then, with the calm of a man already 10 steps ahead, he added, "And I'm not letting you fight it alone." "Daughter." The next morning, Manhattan looked different to Lily, not because the skyline had changed, but because she finally saw the city without the fog of fear that had followed her for years. She woke up in the small guest suite Evan had arranged for her at the Marshall Tower, its floor-to-ceiling windows spilling sunlight across the room. It wasn't extravagant. It was clean, quiet, safe. And for the first time in a long while, Lily felt like she could breathe. Her eyes were still raw from crying, her mind still bruised from Christopher's words, but something inside her had shifted. Evan's revelation echoed in her thoughts like a drumbeat. "You saved his company. You're not small. You're not invisible." She sat at the edge of the bed and looked at her reflection in the glass. The woman staring back at her looked fragile, but beneath the vulnerability, there was a spark, one that had been drowned for too long. Her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Photos from last night are everywhere. Call me." Her stomach twisted. She didn't want to open it, but she did. Dozens of links, headlines screaming. Valicorp CEO shoves wife at gala. Witnesses say it was like watching a man kick his own shadow. Who is the woman Christopher humiliated? Strangers debated her worth. Analysts speculated about the cracks in Valicorp's leadership. Christopher's PR team released a statement claiming she had been emotionally unstable, that she had overreacted, that the shove was misinterpreted. The narrative was being twisted again. Her fingers tightened around the phone. She couldn't hide anymore. She wouldn't. There was a knock at the door. "Come in," she said softly. Evan stepped in, holding 2 cups of coffee. He handed her one without a word, then sat across from her in a chair that looked far too small for a man like him. "You saw the news," he said. She nodded. "He's trying to spin it." "He won't succeed," Evan replied. "Not this time." Lily looked down at the coffee, then back at him. "You said last night was the beginning of a war. I don't know how to fight someone like Christopher." Evan studied her for a moment. "Lily, you've already fought harder battles than he ever has. You survived losing your parents. You survived building a life alone. You survived years beside a man who chipped away at your confidence. You think someone like Christopher scares me?" He shook his head. "He's predictable. You aren't." His words settled into her chest like warmth spreading through frost. "Come with me," he said as he stood. "There's something I want you to see." She followed him into the private elevator. They rode to the 42nd floor, where glass walls opened to a sleek executive workspace, quiet, modern, filled with hushed energy. Analysts glanced up, whispering her name. Her name, not Christopher's wife, hers. Evan led her into a conference room. Screens lit up instantly, displaying documents, financial reports, internal memos, project drafts. Her project drafts. Her handwriting. Her work. "You built this restructuring plan," Evan said. "You saved Valicorp millions. You stabilized their partnerships." Christopher buried it because he couldn't handle the truth. Lily covered her mouth, overwhelmed. "I didn't know." "You do now," Evan said. "And so will the world." She turned toward the glass, seeing her reflection once more, but this time she saw something different. A woman rising. A woman reclaiming herself. A woman who would no longer be spoken over, stepped on, or erased. "Evan," she whispered, "what happens next?" He held her gaze, steady and unflinching. "What happens next," he said, "is that you finally take back everything he stole from your name to your future. If we want to, if we won." And then he added, with a quiet conviction that made her heartbeat quicken, "But first, you're going to walk back into your own life like someone who deserves to be seen." The following afternoon, The city pulsed with a new rhythm, one fueled by headlines, rumors, and the kind of scandal Manhattan devoured like oxygen. Lily felt it all pressing against the windows of Evan's chauffeured car as they drove toward the Marshall Dynamics headquarters for a meeting she still wasn't sure she was ready for. But she was done hiding, done shrinking, done letting Christopher shape the narrative. Evan had laid out the plan carefully, deliberately, making sure she understood each step. "We're not attacking him," he had said. "We're revealing the truth he spent years burying." But Lily knew the truth was the sharpest weapon of all. The car rolled to a stop in front of the Marshall Tower, sleek steel, black glass, a symbol of quiet power. As she stepped inside the lobby, employees paused mid-conversation. Some whispered, some stared. But none looked at her with pity. There was curiosity, respect, something she'd never felt in the halls of Vail Corp. Evan guided her into a private elevator that ascended to a conference floor where Marshall Dynamics' top executives waited. The doors opened to a room buzzing with subdued anticipation. Screens flickered, coffee steamed, papers rustled. "Lily Hartman," Evan introduced, "will be joining today's review." Joining, not observing, not sitting quietly in a corner. Joining? The executives greeted her warmly, a stark contrast to the stiff nods she received at Vail Corp. One woman, the CFO, even reached out to squeeze her hand. "We've heard a lot about your work," she said. "I'm glad you're here." Lily felt her throat tighten with something unfamiliar validation. Evan clicked a remote, projecting 2 documents onto the enormous screen. On the left, Vail Corp's official restructuring plan, credited entirely to Christopher Vail. On the right, Lily's original draft, dated months earlier, complete with her notes, her handwriting, her signature style of color-coded highlights. Gasps filled the room. "This," Evan said, pointing to the original, "is the real brain behind the operation." The changes made in the final version only served one purpose: to erase her. Lily's heart pounded. Seeing her work displayed like this, acknowledged, defended, it felt surreal. The CTO leaned forward. Christopher claimed he wrote all of this himself during late nights in his home office. Evan raised a brow. Interesting claim, because metadata shows the drafts came from Lily's laptop. The room murmured. "And there's more," Evan continued. "Vail Corp is preparing to blame her for the accounting discrepancies currently under investigation. They're setting her up as the scapegoat." The CFO's eyes widened. "Do they realize the digital trail contradicts their story entirely?" "That," Evan said, "is precisely why we're stepping in." Lily swallowed hard. What do you need from me?" Evan turned toward her, his voice calm but unwavering. "Your truth," he said. "Your story. Your name attached to what you actually built." "I'm scared," Lily admitted in a breath barely above a whisper. "Good," Evan replied. "People who aren't scared do reckless things. You're not reckless. You're ready. If you once first, in a Rishan once," he clicked to the next slide. It showed a press conference, stage a simple podium with a Marshall Dynamics banner behind it. Lily stared at the image, her chest rising and falling in uneven breaths. "You want me to speak publicly?" "I want you," Evan said softly, "to take back the voice he stole." Her pulse pounded in her ears. She imagined standing in front of cameras, answering questions, facing the world. The thought terrified her. But the thought of remaining silent terrified her more. And then a notification lit up Evan's phone. He glanced at it, his expression shifting. "What is it?" Lily asked. He held up the screen. A new headline had just been posted. "Christopher Vail arrives at Marshall Tower claims meeting, critical to his future." Lily's blood ran cold. Christopher was here, coming straight toward the floor they were on. And he wasn't coming for Evan. He was coming for her. And the confrontation that followed would ignite the real battle. Christopher Vail's arrival was felt before it was seen. The atmosphere inside the conference floor shifted sharply like a sudden cold draft sweeping through a warm room. Conversations stopped. Executives stiffened. Even the soft hum of the projectors seemed to falter. Lily felt her heartbeat hammering against her ribs as the elevator dinged. Evan didn't look surprised. If anything, he looked prepared. The doors slid open, and Christopher stepped out with the swagger of a man who refused to believe his crown had slipped. His tuxedo from the night before was replaced by a charcoal suit, but his arrogance remained unchanged. His eyes scanned the room sharply, ignoring everyone, landing only on Lily. "There you are," he said, voice dripping false relief. "I've been trying to reach you all morning." Lily instinctively took a step back. Evan subtly shifted, placing himself between them, not touching Lily, but close enough that the gesture said everything. Christopher's gaze snapped to Evan. "This doesn't concern you." "Oh, it does," Evan answered calmly. "You're on my floor, speaking to someone under my protection." That word protection made Christopher's jaw clench. He turned his attention to Lily again, softening his voice into the tone he used when cameras were near. "Sweetheart, last night got out of hand. You know how stressful those events are. I shouldn't have raised my voice, or reacted the way I did." Lily blinked, stunned by his audacity. "You shoved me," she said quietly. Christopher smiled as if she were exaggerating. "You stumbled." Several executives muttered in disbelief. Evan's eyes darkened. But Christopher wasn't done. He stepped forward, lowering his voice to something meant to sound intimate, but it only sounded controlling. "Let's not make this worse. Come home. We'll release a statement saying you were overwhelmed, and the media will move on." Lily felt her nails digging into her palms. "You want me to take the blame?" "It's the simplest solution," he said smoothly. "You're emotional right now. People will understand. But if you go against me—" His tone sharpened. "You're not prepared for a fight like this, Lily. You don't know how vicious the press can get." Evan stepped in. "She doesn't need to know. She's not fighting it alone." "And 12. Christopher glared. "Stay out of it, Marshall." But Evan didn't budge. "Make your point and leave." Christopher's smile turned cold. "Fine. Here's my point." He pulled a folder from his briefcase and tossed it onto the conference table. Papers spilled out documents with Lily's forged signatures on financial approvals, backdated memos, accounting summaries. The room fell silent. Lily stared in horror. What is that?" "Your salvation," Christopher said. "If you come home, I'll destroy these. No one will ever see them." Evan stepped forward. "And if she doesn't?" Christopher shrugged. "Then the world learns she signed off on the discrepancies under investigation. She takes the fall." He leaned back, folding his arms. "Your choice, Lily. Stand with me, or get buried without me." Lily's breath shook. She looked at the forged documents, at the man she once trusted, at the life collapsing around her. Christopher moved closer, lowering his voice to a poisonous whisper. "You're not strong enough to walk away from me." The words hit deeper than the shove. Lily lifted her chin, eyes burning not with fear this time, but with something sharp, rising, unstoppable. She opened her mouth to speak. But before she could, Evan placed a hand on the folder, flipped it over, and slid a thumb drive across the table. A thumb drive with the Marshall Dynamics logo. Christopher's expression faltered. "Actually," Evan said, voice low and lethal, "she doesn't need to walk away from you." He looked right into Christopher's eyes. "She's about to walk through you." And Evan pressed play. The audio from Evan's thumb drive echoed through the conference room like a quiet explosion, recordings of Christopher's own voice admitting he forged Lily's signature, bragging about using her as a shield for his financial mess, sneering about how she'll never leave. She has no one else. Every sentence felt like a blade carving through the illusion Lily had been clinging to for years. When the final recording clicked off, the room fell silent. Christopher stood frozen, color draining from his face. For the first time since she'd met him, Lily saw fear, not the fear of failure, but the fear of exposure. She watched him stutter, his lips parting wordlessly, his earlier bravado collapsing. But this moment wasn't about him. It was about her. Her fingers trembled, but her spine stayed straight as she looked directly at him. "You said I wasn't strong enough," she whispered. "You were wrong." Christopher tried to speak, but she stepped past him, the way a person steps past an old wound that no longer deserves attention. Evan followed her into the private hallway, letting the executives and security handle the aftermath. When the door closed behind them, Lily finally exhaled. Her legs wavered, and she braced a hand against the wall. "Easy," Evan murmured. She shook her head, wiping tears, not of fear, not anymore, but of release. "I didn't know it would feel like this." "Like what?" he asked gently. "Like, I'm waking up from something I didn't know I'd been asleep in." Evan nodded, understanding in his eyes. "That's what freedom feels like." He walked her to a quieter floor, the strategy lounge overlooking the Hudson River. Afternoon light poured in through wide windows, painting her reflection in soft gold. Lily took a seat, staring at the sweeping view as though seeing Manhattan for the first time. "She almost broke you," Evan said quietly, sitting a respectful distance away. Lily didn't argue. She stared at her hands, the same hands that typed reports, drafted proposals, built plans that saved a company she was never credited for. "I let him control everything," she admitted. "My choices, my voice, my future." "No," Evan said. "He took control. You're taking it back." Najee. He slid a small gift bag across the table. Inside lay a Kindle, simple and sleek, not flashy like the luxury trinkets Christopher bought to impress donors. On its screen, a single title waited: Atomic Habits. Lily blinked. "You got this for me?" "I didn't know what might help you," Evan said, "but this book helped me after my father died. It taught me that rebuilding doesn't happen overnight, it happens moment by moment." Reich, end quote. All in verse. She traced her fingers over the device, her chest tightening with gratitude. Not because of the gift itself, but because someone had thought of her with actual sincerity, something she wasn't used to. "Why are you being so kind to me?" she asked quietly. Evan held her gaze. "Because someone should be." A knock interrupted them. It was Maya Harrison, the Marshall Dynamics head of communications. She carried a folder sealed with the company crest. "Miss Hartman," Maya said warmly, "Evan briefed us on your situation. We have a proposition for you." Lily straightened, nerves tightening in her stomach. "A proposition?" Maya nodded. "A consultant position. Flexible hours. Full salary. You'd help us review key financial structures, the kind you already mastered. You'd be on our team not as pity, but as talent." Lily stared, stunned. "You're offering me a job?" "Offering," Maya smiled. "No, we're asking." Tears stung Lily's eyes. Not from weakness, from gratitude. From being seen. From finally being valued. Before she could respond, Maya added, "One more thing. Christopher Vale is downstairs demanding to speak to you. Security wants to know what to do." Lily's breath hitched. Evan leaned in slightly. "You don't owe him anything." But the elevator dinged down the hall. Christopher was already coming, and this time, she wouldn't be running. Before Lily could decide whether to face Christopher or refuse him, security informed her that he had already bypassed the lobby desk and was heading straight for the elevators. His desperation was showing something no one in Manhattan's elite had ever seen from the polished CEO. Evan's jaw tightened. "He thinks he can corner you. He's wrong." Lily swallowed hard. Her heart wasn't racing from fear anymore, it was from something sharper, a rising sense of justice that felt almost electric. She stood, smoothing the front of her blouse, and nodded toward Maya. "Let him come up." Maya hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Yes," Lily said softly. "I'm done being afraid." Moments later, the elevator dinged. The doors opened to reveal Christopher sweaty, frantic, eyes wild with a mixture of panic and entitlement. His gaze locked on Lily instantly. "There you are," he breathed as if relieved. "We need to talk. Alone." "No," Lily said firmly. "We talk here. In front of the people who've seen the truth." Christopher clenched his jaw. "Lily, come on. Don't be dramatic. You're confused, overwhelmed." Evan stepped beside her. "She's not confused. You are." Christopher ignored Evan and dug through his briefcase, pulling out a stack of papers, waving them like some twisted peace offering. "Look, the forged documents. They're nothing. I can destroy them. No one will ever know." Lily's voice remained calm. "They're already archived in multiple places. You can't erase them." His face paled. "You wouldn't do that to me." "You already did it to yourself," she replied. For the first time, Christopher's mask cracked. He looked around the room at the executives watching him. People he once dismissed as irrelevant now stood between him and survival. He shifted tactics quickly. "Okay, look." He lowered his voice, trying to sound gentle. "I messed up. I shouldn't have yelled at you. I shouldn't have reacted that way. Just come home. We'll fix this together. I can protect you." Lily stared at him, stunned by the irony. "You used me as a scapegoat, Christopher. You forged my name. You blamed me for your crimes." "I had no choice," he snapped. "You always had a choice," she said. "And you always had one job," he shot back bitterly. "Stand by me. That's what a wife does." Evan stepped forward. "Careful." Christopher rounded on him. You stay out of this. You don't know anything about our marriage. I thinged. Evan's eyes stayed unwavering. I know enough to recognize abuse when I see it. Christopher scoffed. Please. You think you're the hero here? You don't know her like I do. She's soft, emotional. She needs someone to guide her. Lily flinched not from his words, but from the familiarity of them. The way he twisted weakness into identity. She lifted her chin. No, I needed someone to respect me, not control me. Christopher stared at her, as if seeing a stranger. So that's it? You think you're stronger because you're standing next to him now? Lily shook her head slowly. I'm stronger because I'm finally standing next to myself. His expression flickered. Shock, disbelief, anger. Then Evan opened a manila folder and placed it on the table. In case you're wondering how much trouble you're really in, he said, this is everything my team uncovered about the missing funds. They're sevened. Christopher's eyes darted over the pages. Bank transfers, falsified invoices, emails he thought were deleted. His hands began to shake. You hacked me, Christopher whispered. We didn't hack anything, Evan corrected. Your assistant sold us your second phone. Christopher's breath hitched. But why would she? Lily inhaled sharply. Because you grabbed her arm last month in front of the interns. Christopher blinked, stunned. She recorded that too, Evan added. And she's willing to testify. The room whirled around Christopher as the truth closed in. He stumbled back, reaching for the wall, his confidence collapsing like a structure hollowed from within. Finally, his voice cracked. What do you want from me? Lily stepped forward, not vengeful, not cruel, but resolute. I don't want anything from you, she said. I want everything you stole from me returned. Christopher swallowed. And if I refuse? Lily didn't answer. Because at that exact moment, the elevator dinged again. Security stepped out, and they weren't alone. They brought someone who held the final piece of evidence, someone Christopher never expected to betray him. The elevator doors slid open with a mechanical sigh, revealing someone Lily never expected to see. Stepping into the Marshall Dynamics conference floor, Emily Rhodes, Christopher's former assistant. The same Emily who used to smile nervously whenever Christopher barked orders. The same Emily who vanished from ValeCorp a month ago without explanation. She looked different now, calmer, stronger, her shoulders squared beneath a simple blazer. But what truly stunned everyone was the thick folder she carried and the thumb drive clipped to the side. Christopher staggered back. What the hell are you doing here? Emily didn't flinch. Finishing what you started. His face drained of color. You were loyal to me. No, Emily said softly. I was afraid of you. Thanks for watching. 27. She handed the folder to Maya, who immediately opened it. Inside were screenshots, printed emails, timestamps, financial trails, evidence far more damning than what Evan had uncovered. You kept copies? Christopher choked out. Emily nodded. You threatened me at least 7 times in the past year. You grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises. You forced me to delete files that proved your fraud. Her voice remained steady. I kept everything because I knew one day I'd need to protect myself or someone else. Lily felt her breath hitch. Emily's eyes softened when they met hers. I'm sorry, I didn't speak sooner. I wanted to, but you know how he is. Lily nodded, understanding too well. Evan flipped through the pages, eyes narrowing as he absorbed each detail. This is enough to launch a full federal investigation. But 2. Daver. Christopher lunged forward, trying to snatch the folder, but security blocked him with a firm hand to the chest. You can't take those, Christopher shouted. That's confidential ValeCorp property. Emily gave a small, humorless laugh. Funny. You didn't care about confidentiality when you asked me to falsify investor updates. The executives murmured, some shocked, others unsurprised. Christopher's desperation mounted. He turned to Lily, reaching for her hands as if they still belonged to him. Lily, listen to me. They're turning you against me. Evan has wanted to destroy me for years. You know that. Don't let them use you. Lily withdrew her hands. The only person who used me was you. He tried again, this time pleading. I can fix this. We can run. We can fight it together. Lily stared at him with a steady calm he had never seen in her before. You didn't want a partner. You wanted a shield. End quote. His face twisted. You would ruin me for one mistake? One mistake? Lily repeated softly. You forged my name. You stole my work. You lied about me. You shoved me in front of a ballroom of people who knew my name before they knew my face. Christopher looked around the room at the executives, security, Maya, Emily, Evan. Everyone saw him not as the polished CEO, the golden boy of Manhattan, but as a man unraveling. He swung toward Evan. You planned this? You've been waiting to tear me apart. Evan remained unfazed. I didn't have to do anything. You did it yourself. Security approached. Mr. Vale, you need to leave the premises. Christopher backed up, panic rising. No, you can't escort me out. I'm not done. Evan crossed his arms. You are now. Christopher shoved the guard and pointed at Lily. This isn't over. You think you won because you have him? Because you have this little pity party? His voice cracked with venom. I'll bury you in court. I'll destroy what's left of your reputation. Enough, Lily said sharply. The words sliced through the room. Everyone went still. For years, you convinced me I was small, she said quietly. Today, you showed everyone the truth. The only small person here is you. Something inside Christopher broke then. His shoulders sagged, his breath came in ragged bursts, and for the first time, he looked genuinely afraid. Security stepped closer. But before they could reach him, Christopher's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. His face blanched. God, no, this can't be happening, he whispered. Evan frowned. What is it? Christopher's voice trembled. Vale Corp's board just called an emergency meeting. They're suspending me pending investigation. Emily exhaled sharply. Lily looked down. But Evan's eyes sharpened. Because he knew. This was only the beginning of Christopher's fall. The world outside didn't slow down for Christopher's downfall. In fact, it sped up, hungry for details, updates, angles. Vale Corp stock dipped sharply as news of the emergency board meeting leaked. Analysts debated his guilt. Social media exploded with footage from the gala. The shove, the shock, the gasps, and Lily's face, fragile, stunned, was replayed on every major financial network. But inside Marshall Tower, a new narrative was forming. A narrative about her. Lily spent the next 2 days surrounded by analysts, attorneys, and communications strategists. She didn't hide from her story. She studied it, owned it, learned where it had been twisted and where she needed to straighten it. And slowly, piece by piece, she reclaimed the pieces of herself Christopher had scattered over the years. Maya guided her through mock interviews. Evan helped her review financial documents and identify which parts she wanted to address publicly. She practiced in front of a glass wall overlooking the skyline, her posture straightening a little more each time. You're good at this, Maya said after one session. Lily gave a modest shrug. I'm just following your notes. No, Maya corrected gently. You're leading the room without realizing it. That sentence echoed in Lily's mind long after. Her transformation wasn't loud. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't some montage of glittering outfits and triumphant music. It was subtle, a quiet rebuilding of confidence that came from finally being believed, respected, valued. On the morning of her first internal briefing, Evan handed her a tailored blazer in soft charcoal gray. Wear this, he said. It suits the woman you're becoming. Her cheeks warmed, but she accepted it. The fabric felt empowering, not ostentatious, nothing like the sequined dresses Christopher used to insist she wear. She walked into the strategy room, where 20 executives waited, including department heads and key decision-makers. A part of her expected them to doubt her, dismiss her, look past her the way Vale Corp always had. But instead, they greeted her with nods of acknowledgement. Evan began the meeting, then stepped aside. Lily will lead today's analysis. Her pulse spiked. This was it, the moment she'd been building toward. She moved to the head of the table, clicked the remote, and watched her projections fill the screen. The room grew silent, not with skepticism, but with attention. She explained gaps in Vale Corp's financial structure, outlined how Christopher's decisions created long-term risk, and pointed to opportunities Marshall Dynamics could seize in response. Her voice didn't shake, not once. When she finished, the room erupted into discussion, questions, clarifications, praise. That was brilliant, the CFO said. We should consider integrating her into upcoming acquisitions, another executive added. She has vision, someone whispered near the back. Lily felt a warmth spread through her chest. This was what being seen felt like. After the meeting, Evan approached her with an expression she'd rarely seen on him, quiet pride. "You exceeded every expectation," he said. Her voice wavered with emotion. "Thank you for believing in me." Evan shook his head. "I didn't believe in you. I recognized you. There's a difference." Her eyes softened, and for a moment, she felt something shift, something unspoken, delicate, dangerous. But before the moment could deepen, Maya rushed in with her phone in hand, urgency radiating from her. "You both need to see this," she said breathlessly. Evan took the phone. His expression hardened instantly. "What is it?" Lily asked, her stomach tightening. Maya swallowed. "Christopher just called an emergency press conference at ValeCorp headquarters. He's blaming the accounting scandal on you." Lily froze. But Maya wasn't finished. "And he's claiming," she said with a grimace, "that you and Evan have been conspiring together." Lily's blood ran cold. Because one accusation could spark chaos, and she had no idea what Christopher would say next. But the city was about to find out. Christopher Vale had always believed he could talk his way out of anything. He built an empire out of charm, pressure, and half-truths, delivered with a smile polished enough to disarm senators and billionaire investors alike. But the moment he stepped onto the press conference stage at ValeCorp headquarters, that trademark confidence faltered. The lights were too bright, the cameras too close, the murmuring crowd far too hungry. Reporters from every financial network lined up shoulder to shoulder, microphones pointed at him like weapons. Behind them, employees whispered nervously, watching their CEO with suspicion instead of admiration. Christopher cleared his throat. "Thank you all for coming. I'd like to address the misinformation circulating regarding ValeCorp's recent financial discrepancies." Misinformation. The word tasted sour. He forced a smile, hoping the cameras wouldn't catch the slight tremor in his hand. "I want to be perfectly clear. The person responsible for the irregularities is my wife, Lily Hartman Vale. Thanks for watching." Gasps echoed. Flashes burst like lightning. Christopher pressed on. "She acted independently, without the company's approval. A reporter raised a hand sharply. "Mr. Vale, multiple witnesses saw you shove your wife at the Ritz-Carlton gala last night. Are you saying the woman you publicly humiliated is the same woman orchestrating complex financial fraud?" Christopher stiffened. She was emotionally unstable. "If we ate," but her original restructuring draft was found by Marshall Dynamics. Another reporter interrupted. "It contradicts your version entirely." Christopher blinked. That's taken out of context." A third reporter stepped forward, eyes sharp. "Sources say federal investigators were already reviewing your personal accounts before any documents surfaced. Care to comment?" He faltered. "My accounts? No, that's ridiculous. I have nothing to hide." But the room smelled blood. Cameras zoomed in. Christopher tugged his collar. Sweat beaded under the stage lights. Inside the building's executive wing, the board of directors watched the live broadcast from a glass conference room, their faces hardened with each word. Their golden boy was unraveling in real time, wild, defensive, desperate. One board member muttered, "He's finished." Another replied, "The shareholders will demand accountability." End quote. Meanwhile, downtown at Marshall Tower, Lily stood with Evan and Maya, watching the broadcast from the strategy lounge. Her stomach churned with a mix of disbelief and sorrow, not for the man at the podium, but for the years she lost believing he was better than this. "He's spiraling," Maya whispered. Lily nodded slowly. "He always spirals when he's losing control." Evan crossed his arms. "And he's about to lose much more than that. And Oversev. And Wirt, Tom Afterade has word her." Back on the stage, Christopher grew more frantic, flipping through his cue cards as reporters bombarded him with questions he couldn't answer. "Is it true your assistant kept incriminating evidence? Why did you forge your wife's signatures? Did you threaten Miss Hartman? Are you aware Marshall Dynamics has offered her a position?" That last question hit him like a punch. His voice cracked. She wouldn't. She's not capable." Reporters shouted over him. "Sources say she's been advising their executive team." "Did you steal her work? Why did you erase her name from internal documents?" His mask shattered. Christopher slammed his fist on the podium. "She owes everything to me." The room gasped. The microphones caught every syllable. And in that split second, Something changed not just in the room, but across the city. Christopher had finally revealed his true self. Insecure, vindictive, threatened by the woman he tried to break. Lily shut off the broadcast. Her hands no longer trembled. "He's done," she whispered. Evan nodded. "Not yet, but he will be." Suddenly Maya's phone buzzed violently. She glanced at the screen, her eyes widening. "What happened?" Lily asked. Maya swallowed. "Christopher just left the podium mid-interview," she said. "Security escorted him to a private elevator." Evan frowned. "Why?" Maya looked up, voice trembling. "Because federal agents just arrived at Vale Corp headquarters." "If once..." Lily felt her heartbeat stop for a second. And then Maya added, "They asked for Christopher Vale by name." The coffee shop on the corner of Park Avenue and 57th Street was quiet for once, its soft jazz humming beneath the gentle clatter of cups. Lily chose this place intentionally, public enough to keep Christopher calm, private enough to hear every word. She sat near the window, hands wrapped around a warm Starbucks cup, steam curling upward like fragile hope. She didn't want to see him, but she needed to. Evan had insisted on coming with her, but Lily shook her head. "I need to end this myself." So she sat alone. 10 minutes later, the door chimed. Christopher entered wearing a dark overcoat, sunglasses, and a frantic tension he couldn't hide. His world was crumbling around him, and every step he took revealed the panic he tried so desperately to bury. He spotted her instantly. "There you are," he exhaled, forcing a smile as he approached the table. "Thank you for agreeing to meet." Lily didn't stand. "Sit." Her voice surprised, even herself steady, composed, detached. Christopher slid into the seat opposite her, removing his sunglasses. "You look different." "I am different," she said softly. He leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Lily, listen. Everything that's happening, it's temporary. The agents, the board, the press, they're reacting emotionally. But once things calm down, I can fix this. We can fix this. It's Rever." She stirred her coffee, the spoon tapping the ceramic, calm and rhythmic. "There is no we anymore." Christopher froze. Lily continued, "You used my name for fraud. You erased my work. You humiliated me publicly. You told the world I was unstable." "That was strategic," he insisted quickly. "Crisis management. You know how PR works. I had to redirect attention. It wasn't personal." She lifted her eyes. "You shoved me." He flinched. The word hit harder than a slap. "That wasn't. You tripped. You know how clumsy you get when you're anxious." "Christopher," she said quietly, "I didn't fall because I'm clumsy. I fell because you pushed me." Silence. He sat back, anger flickering beneath the surface. "You're being dramatic." Lily's grip tightened around the cup. "No, I'm being honest, for the first time in years." Christopher exhaled sharply, shifting tactics yet again. "Fine. You want honesty? Here it is. You can't survive without me. You don't know this world. You don't know how brutal it is. These people, these executives, they'll use you, then toss you aside." "They already did that," she said. "But it wasn't them. It was you." His jaw twitched. "You think Evan Marshall cares about you?" Christopher leaned in, voice bitter. "He's manipulating you for leverage. You're just a pawn in his war against me." Lily held his stare. "A pawn doesn't get credit for saving a company. A pawn doesn't get offered a position based on talent. A pawn doesn't get recorded proof of the truth." He swallowed, realizing she wasn't wavering. For the first time since they married, Lily saw fear, real fear behind his eyes. "You're leaving me," he whispered. "For them?" "No," Lily said. "I'm leaving you for me." Christopher's hands tightened around the edge of the table. "Lily, everything you have." "Everything I have," she interrupted, "I earned. Everything you stole is coming back. And everything you fear is already happening." His breath shook. "Christopher," she added softly, "this is the last time we speak as husband and wife." He stared at her, as if the words physically pierced him. "You're making a mistake." "No," she said, "you did." She placed her key to the penthouse on the table. It clinked against the surface, a small sound, yet it felt like the closing of a door that had been opened too long. Christopher's voice broke. "Lily, don't do this. I kind of the self." She stood, pulling her coat closer around herself. "Goodbye." But as she turned toward the exit, her phone buzzed violently in her pocket. She glanced at the screen. Her breath caught. Evan, Lily, you need to get back to Marshall Tower. Now. It's urgent. She spun toward Christopher, who was already watching her with something dark in his eyes, something calculating. What did you do? She whispered. He didn't answer, because the truth was already spreading through Manhattan like wildfire, and Lily was about to walk into the most dangerous twist yet. By the time Lily rushed through the revolving doors of Marshall Tower, her pulse was pounding so violently she felt it echo in her ears. The lobby, usually calm and sleek with polished black marble and soft lighting, buzzed with tension. Employees whispered in hushed tones, glancing anxiously at their phones. Something had happened, something big. Evan was waiting for her near the private elevator, jaw tight, eyes hard. "What's going on?" Lily demanded, breathless. He pressed the elevator button. "We need to get upstairs first." "Evan, tell me," she insisted. He exhaled sharply. Christopher did something reckless, desperate, dangerous. Her stomach dropped. What did he do? "He leaked confidential documents," Evan said, stepping into the elevator with her. "And he framed you as the source." Lily's breath hitched. "What documents?" "Marshall Dynamics' acquisition strategy for the next fiscal year." Her mind raced. "But I've never even seen those files." "That's exactly why it's dangerous," Evan said. "Because your name is attached to the leak, and you can't defend yourself with simple denial. The timing, the precision, this wasn't impulsive. This was calculated." The elevator doors opened to the executive floor, usually serene and organized, now flooded with frantic energy. Staff hurried down the hall carrying tablets, phones, printed reports. The strategist team was gathered around a large screen displaying headlines from major outlets. Mysterious leak from inside Marshall Dynamics. Source identified as trusted consultant. Is this retaliation by the Veil scandal wife? Lily felt her chest tighten painfully. "He's trying to destroy my credibility." "He's trying to bury himself by burying you," Evan corrected. "He thinks if he drags you down far enough, he can climb back out." Maya rushed toward them, her face pale. "It gets worse," she said, handing Lily a tablet. "Look." A video clip filled the screen. Christopher, filmed secretly in his car, speaking frantically to a reporter. "My wife is unstable," he said. "She's retaliating because she's furious. I exposed her fraud. She leaked those documents. She wants to destroy both companies." End quote. The reporter asked, "Do you have proof?" Christopher hesitated, then forced a confident nod. "I have enough." Lily nearly dropped the tablet. "He's unhinged. He's cornered," Evan said. "Cornered men lash out." Maya added, "The board wants a statement within the hour. They're considering freezing our upcoming deals until this is resolved." Lily felt the room spin. Everything she had built since walking away from Christopher, all her progress, all her healing, was suddenly at risk. The fear clawed up her throat, old and familiar, threatening to pull her backward. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't go through being blamed again. I can't have people think." Evan stepped forward, resting a steady hand on her arm. "Look at me." She did. "You are not alone in this," he said firmly. "And you are not the woman he used to manipulate. You have truth, you have evidence, you have us." Tears pricked at her eyes. "He won't stop until I'm ruined." "No," Evan said. "He won't stop until someone stops him." He turned to Maya. "Prepare a full press response. Get legal on standby, and pull every security report from the last 24 hours. Maya nodded and sprinted off. Lily wiped her eyes, furious at herself for trembling. "What if he has more? What if he twists something else?" Evan said quietly, "Then we twist it back." She stared at him, searching his face for reassurance, for strength, finding both. But before she could speak, the lights in the council room flickered. A warning buzz sounded across the floor. Maya reappeared, breathless. "Evan, Lily, you need to see this." She pointed to the main screen. A new headline had just broken. "Anonymous source releases security footage of gala incident." Lily's blood ran cold as the video began to play. Because the footage wasn't just the shove. It was something far worse Christopher never knew was caught on camera. The leaked footage spread across Manhattan like wildfire. A silent, grainy clip captured by a security camera just outside the Ritz-Carlton ballroom. It showed the moment before the shove, the moment no one in the ballroom had seen. Christopher gripping Lily's arm so tightly she winced, shaking her as he hissed something venomous into her ear. The clip had no sound, but the aggression was unmistakable. Worse, it showed the part he thought was hidden from all angles, him threatening her. It was undeniable. It was damning. And it was everywhere. Within hours, major networks replayed the footage nonstop. Social media erupted, shifting overnight from speculation to condemnation. Veil Corp's PR pages were flooded with outrage. Feminist groups, business commentators, and even political figures demanded an investigation. One senator tweeted, "No woman should ever be treated this way, especially by someone holding power." By sunset, the entire city was waiting for Lily's response, and she knew exactly where she needed to give it. At the annual Winter Futures Gala held, ironically, at the same Ritz-Carlton ballroom where everything began. This time, she wasn't attending as Christopher's silent accessory. She was attending as the woman the entire business world wanted to hear from, whether she was ready or not. Hours before the event, she stood in the Marshall Tower dressing room. It wasn't glamorous like the luxury suites Christopher once paraded her through. It was simple, private, warm. Her charcoal blazer was replaced by a long, elegant black dress, minimalist, timeless, chosen by her. She curled her own hair, applied her own makeup. No stylists, no pressure, no Christopher. Just Lily. When she finally stepped toward the elevator, Evan was waiting. He didn't stare. He didn't compliment her appearance in a way that made her shrink. He simply nodded, his eyes reflecting quiet pride. "You ready?" he asked. "No," she admitted, "but I'm going anyway." He offered his arm not as a demand, not as ownership, but as an option. She didn't take it. She walked beside him instead. The car ride to the Ritz-Carlton was silent, heavy with anticipation. Camera crews filled the sidewalks outside the hotel, lights flashing like lightning bursts across the main entrance. When the doors opened, reporters surged forward with questions, microphones thrust toward her, voices blending into a chaotic roar. "Lily, do you have a statement? Are you pressing charges? Is it true he forged your name? Is Christopher Vail lying about the leak? Are you working with Marshall Dynamics?" Flashes exploded around her, but Lily didn't flinch. She walked through them with a quiet strength she never knew she possessed. Inside the ballroom, the atmosphere shifted instantly. Conversations hushed, heads turned, people parted instinctively, creating a path straight down the center of the room. This time, Lily wasn't invisible. She wasn't a shadow. She was the story. Some guests offered sympathetic nods. Others whispered in awe. A few looked guilty, remembering how they'd watched her humiliation without stepping in. Lily reached the stage, where the event host gave her the microphone with a respectful bow. She paused, scanning the crowd, the same chandeliers, the same polished marble, the same elite faces, but everything felt different. Because she was different. She inhaled slowly. "My name is Lily Hartman," she began, her voice steady. "And I'm here tonight not as someone's wife, but as myself." The crowd leaned in. She continued, "What happened at this gala wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a stumble. It wasn't stress. It was abuse." A ripple moved through the room. "I stayed silent for years, believing it made me loyal," she said. "But silence only protects the person hurting you." Flashes erupted. Guests murmured. Every camera in the room turned toward her. "And now," Lily said, lifting her chin, "I'm done being silent." But before she could finish, a voice boomed from the entrance. "You're lying." Every head turned. Christopher Vail stood at the doorway, disheveled, enraged, flanked by 2 federal agents trying to restrain him. He pointed directly at Lily, eyes wild. "This isn't over. You think you can destroy me? You think you can take everything?" Security rushed toward him. Lily didn't move. The man who once towered over her now looked small, shrunken by his own corruption. But then the lead federal agent raised a badge. "Christopher Vail," he announced, "you're under arrest." The ballroom erupted in gasps. Christopher froze, and Lily exhaled. But the night wasn't over, because the agent added, "And you're not the only one we're here for." For a heartbeat, the entire ballroom froze. Even the chandeliers seemed to hold their breath as Christopher stood there pale, trembling, eyes darting wildly between Lily, the cameras, and the federal agents gripping his arms. This was not the polished CEO who once charmed every boardroom in Manhattan. This was a man stripped of power, stripped of pretense, stripped of the very image he cared about more than anything else. But then the words echoed again. And you're not the only one we're here for. I did. A wave of confusion swept across the crowd. Lily stiffened. Evan, standing near the side of the ballroom, straightened in alarm. Christopher tried to lunge toward her, but the agents tightened their hold. "Don't you dare," he shouted. "Don't you dare take her too. This is her fault." The lead agent ignored him and stepped forward, pulling a second set of documents from his jacket. "Miss Lily Hartman," he began. Lily's breath caught. A murmur rippled through the room. Evan took a step toward her, but she held up her hand, steady, calm, brave. The agent continued. "These documents pertain to the investigation you helped launch. You are not under arrest. You are needed to testify formally as the primary witness." The room exhaled collectively. Cameras flashed. Lily's shoulders loosened, tension sliding from her like a heavy cloak. Christopher, however, crumbled. "You ruined me," he screamed. "You set me up." "Disidra." "I told the truth," Lily said, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "You ruined yourself." Reporters surged forward, eager to capture the moment. Microphones appeared like a forest of eager questions. "Miss Hartman, did you know this would happen? Did you plan tonight's statement? Will you take legal action? Is your relationship with Marshall Dynamics influencing this case?" Lily raised a hand, and somehow, miraculously, the room quieted. "What you saw tonight," she said clearly, "is the result of years of silence finally breaking. I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth. And the truth has consequences." She turned toward Christopher, who glared at her as if she were the cause of his downfall rather than the mirror reflecting it. "You taught me to be small," she continued. "You taught me to be quiet. You taught me to fear stepping out of your shadow. But tonight," she stepped forward, her dress gliding across the marble floor like a line being drawn. "I no longer stand in your shadow. I stand in my own light." The ballroom erupted in applause, unexpected, thunderous, cathartic. Some guests stood, a few even wiped away tears. The same room that once watched her humiliation now watched her rise. Christopher's face twisted as agents began escorting him toward the exit. "This isn't over," he shouted, voice cracking. "You think you've won? You think anyone will believe you once they know what you really are?" She tilted her head. "I know what I am. A survivor." "You're mine," he roared, trying to break free. "No," Lily said simply. "I never was." As the agents dragged him out, Christopher's last scream echoed down the hallway, raw, furious, defeated. The room slowly returned to motion. People approached Lily, offering condolences, admiration, support. But she barely heard them. Her heart was pounding again, but this time, with adrenaline, relief, and something else. Evan stepped up beside her, lowering his voice so only she could hear. "You handled that with more strength than anyone I've ever seen." Lily finally looked at him fully, really looked at him. Under the golden lights, his expression wasn't triumphant or proud. It was gentle, respectful, steady. "Thank you," she whispered. "I couldn't have done this alone." "You didn't," he said softly. "But make no mistake, this victory belongs to you." Before she could respond, Maya hurried toward them, holding her phone with trembling fingers. "Lily, Evan, the board of Vailcorp just released an emergency bulletin." Evan raised a brow. "Already?" Maya nodded. "And you need to see it." She turned the screen toward them. At the top of the bulletin, in bold black letters, Vailcorp officially terminates Christopher Vail. Interim restructuring led by Lily Hartman. Lily staggered. Her name, her work, her victory. The ballroom lights shimmered around her as the realization sank in. But the night held one more twist she never saw coming. The room spun around Lily, not with fear this time, but with overwhelming disbelief. Her name, printed under Vailcorp's emergency restructuring notice, not hidden, not erased, not buried under someone else's ego, recognized. Evan steadied her with a gentle hand on her back. "Breathe," he murmured. "You earned this. Devon." In grade. But Lily barely heard him as the applause inside the ballroom swelled again. People she'd never met approached with handshakes, warm smiles, genuine respect. For the first time in her life, she wasn't being looked at with pity or condescension. She was being seen. A federal officer approached quietly. "Miss Hartman, we'll need your full testimony tomorrow. The evidence against your husband is overwhelming. With your statement, the case will be airtight." Lily nodded. I'll be there. In 4. A weight lifted from her chest, one that had been tightening for years. The fear of him, the fear of losing herself, the fear of never finding the strength to walk away. She was done carrying that. As the crowd began to disperse, Evan stepped closer. Are you all right? Lily turned to him, a soft smile forming on her lips. I think, for the first time in years, I am. They stepped aside, finding a quiet corner of the ballroom where the music had softened into a slow classical melody. The chandeliers glowed above them like constellations, not cold anymore, but warm, almost celebratory. You didn't have to fight this battle with me, Lily said. Evan's gaze held hers. You didn't have to fight it alone. She exhaled shakily, emotion swelling in her chest. I don't know what happens next. Next, Evan said, you get your life back, your career, your peace. He hesitated for the first time that night, a rare crack in his confident veneer. And maybe, he added quietly, if you ever want something more, someone who sees you, respects you, stands with you, I'd like the chance to earn that place. Lily's breath caught, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was hope, gentle, warm, unfamiliar, but welcome. She stepped closer. You already earned it. Evan's eyes softened, but he didn't touch her. Not yet. Instead, he offered his hand, simple and steady. Lily placed hers in his, and he held it the way no one ever had, with respect, not possession. The ballroom around them continued to hum with soft conversation, as federal agents escorted Christopher out a side exit, handcuffed, defeated, yelling protests no one listened to. His empire collapsed behind him like a tower of brittle glass. The board permanently removed him. The press tore into his lies. Investors withdrew. His name would forever be tied to scandal, not success. That was his ending. And Lily finally had hers. Later that night, Evan insisted on walking her to the waiting car. Manhattan glowed outside the skyline, shimmering like a promise instead of a threat. She paused before stepping inside. Evan, she said softly. He turned. Thank you for giving me back my voice. He shook his head. You never lost it. You just needed someone to remind you it was yours. Emotion tightened her throat. She stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. A gentle, grateful embrace. Evan froze for half a second, then returned it carefully, respectfully, as though holding something precious. When she pulled away, tears glimmered in her eyes, but they weren't from pain. They were from freedom. Good night, Lily, he said. Good night, she whispered. The car door closed. As the city lights streaked past the windows, Lily rested her head back, exhaling deeply. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't hiding. She wasn't shrinking. She was rising. Tomorrow, she would testify. Next week, she would begin her new position. And someday soon, when her heart healed fully, she knew exactly who she wanted standing beside her. But tonight, she finally had peace. And for the first time, she believed she deserved it. So, our story finally comes to an end. And if you're still here with me at this very moment, my friend, it means something inside this journey touched your heart in a way only you understand. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength, or maybe it whispered something you needed to hear. What Lily went through is something many people quietly endure in real life, being underestimated, manipulated, or made to feel small. But the truth is simple and powerful. No one gets to decide your worth except you. The Stoics used to say, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Marcus Aurelius. And that's exactly what Lily learned. When the world tried to break her, she didn't fight the storm, she became the storm. The real message here, you can rise again. You can reclaim your voice. You can walk out of any darkness with your dignity intact. And if this story gave you courage, even just a little, then don't let it end here. Like the video. Share it with someone who might need it. And subscribe so we can keep walking through these stories together. Because healing is easier when we don't do it alone.